Okay, yeah, let's actually get started.
Okay, part 2 of pitching marathon.
好，那就是我们上一场是专门讲针对就是发行商的提案。
Right. So this one is titled "How to Pitch to Your Team," but you might also call it "Should I Really Make This Game?"
对，那这个主题虽然表面上是写说如何提案给你的团队，那其实你可以把它想象成说，你到底该不该做这款游戏？
So what we just saw with Ed is like how a pitch is structured, right? Like you start with the elevator pitch, the very short summary of what the game is like, and then you probably have some images. He had some GIFs there, maybe have music that shows the theme of the game. You explain what the design pillars are, what the genre is, what the expected gameplay experience would be like. If you have a demo, that's great because that already you can get people experience the emotions that you want them to experience. But otherwise, you have to explain it, and then you put a little bit about your team, right? So you do all that.
那就是基本上这段跟就是刚Ed 讲到的内容，其实算是重复性是蛮高的。就基本上一个 pitch， 你就算不是对发行商做，那基本上你会要有的要素，就是像简报上面提到的这些，就是还是蛮基本的。你要有画面，你要有可以参考、可以让你判断气氛的一些资料，然后很具体的，然后你的游戏重点主轴是什么，你的体验大概会长怎样，你的情绪情感大概会长怎样，你的团队构成是什么，这些都是蛮基础的要素。
And it's like it's fairly standard. Like all the other publishers, all the reference material that Ed linked, it will basically follow a very similar structure, right? So, okay, this is a thing. That's what publishers want. That's what we do when we pitch to publishers. But like, why? I mean, seriously, like, why?
对，那就是所有发行商会提出的他们的范本，大概都会要你写这些东西。那但是在你回答这些问题之前，应该是有一个更根本的问题是说，那你到底为什么要做这件事情
？There must be a good reason. So any ideas?
对，就是你到底为什么要去做这个提案？你为什么要去做这件事情？那看大家有没有什么想法？为何你觉得需要提案？对，要赚钱。
Who makes money?
Who makes money?
How does this structure help the publisher make money? I couldn't hear that, sorry. Sorry, still cannot hear. Can you hear?
Yeah, so basically, the audience said, basically, he thinks that you want to have this pitch, so that the publisher can understand, like, okay, this is a unique product, and this unique product is out there. Can be if this product is out there, it can be competitive in the market, and hopefully this makes money. For the publisher and for you.
Okay,
right?
Okay. So yeah, we're getting closer. So, right, there's something about the product that you want to explain, and the publisher needs to know something about the product because they are gonna do an analysis and a prediction, right? That's what it all comes down to.
对，那所以就是发行商看到你讲的这些特色，那个 pitch 内容，你的这些提案内容之后，他最重要的他还是需要去做一些发行商那边会看到的一些分析。那为什么他们要觉得说这个东西是有价值的，或者是为什么他们要做这件事情？为什么他们要签你这个游戏
？So especially when you ask for money up front, the publisher will want to know whether they can make back that money, and so they have to evaluate the product or the idea, depending on how far along you are. And so there's this quote from Ryan Clark, who is the CEO, I think, of Brace Yourself Games. They have made Crypt of the Necrodancer, Industries of Titan. They've been here at TGS 2018. You should talk to him next time he's here. He has it's like a podcast kind of on where he talks about, where he analyzes games and predicts whether they will do well or not.
对，那这个开发者是 Ryan Clark， 他是一个蛮有名的独立游戏团队的负责人，然后就是 Brace Yourself Games 的负责人。那他有一个 podcast 叫 Clark Tank。Clark
Tank。
对 ，Clark Tank 在 Twitch 上面可以看他直播。那他直播完的这个 Clark Tank 的集数也会放到 YouTube 上面。那他就是会根据一些就是游戏的特性或是一些市场的重点去做作品分析，然后看这个东西的市场性的分析之类的。那他们这个团队之前做过蛮多有名的游戏，像 Crypt of Necrodancer， 然后像最近有一个这个泰坦工业，这些都是还蛮有名的例子。
Right, and so he is basically trying to solve the same problem a publisher is trying to solve, which is to evaluate which idea to invest in. A publisher invests money, you invest time, maybe even your own money, but it always comes down to the same thing. Should I invest in this idea, or would another idea be more useful to invest in?
对，那发行商跟开发者在看这些东西的时候，其实虽然他的目的有点不一样，可是到最后他都还是要经过就是分析类似的事情，然后来决定。比如说发行商会是去决定说他们要不要投资这款游戏，那开发者可能是要去想说，那他经过这些分析之后，开发者自己要不要去开发这款游戏，他到底要不要投资时间、跟人力、金钱、跟这个精神去做这个东西。
Right, and so all this stuff that we do, the standard structure, is basically a way to, in a structured way, take the idea apart so that you can analyze each individual piece and do what is called a viability analysis.
对，那刚刚的我们提到这些很常见的简报的框架，就是你的提案简报的框架，它目的就是为了要有助于接到这个简报的人去做可行性分析。
And so the viability analysis has 3 parts, which we'll talk about individually, right? So in your structured pitch deck, you explain the hooks of the game, what's special about your game. You say something about who you are, what your team looks like, right? And then maybe you have an idea about the market, but probably because you're a game developer, you don't really care about that too much. This is mostly where the publisher comes in. They look at tons of games. They look at how games are doing in the market, and they probably have a better feel for whether what you are making is commercially has potential.
对，那基本上就是你如果把那个简报，你的提案简报大概区分下来的话，大概就是会有这3大方面。一个是你的游戏的题材到底有没有什么点子，或者是可以吸引人的部分，那是在 hook 的部分。然后你会讲一下你自己的团队的状况跟你团队的需求，那是在你的团队的讨论的这一块。那另外一块是可能开发者你自己在开发游戏的时候比较不太熟悉的，可能就是市场面向。你做这款游戏的时候，你可能不太确定到底这款游戏在市场上的表现会是如何，或者是你所瞄准的目标市场到底是不是正确的。那发行商可能他有比较多看这些游戏跟看这些数据的经验，他会比较熟悉市场这一块。但总之，它合起来就是像一个这样子的可行性分析的一个概念。
Right, and so like predicting whether a game will be successful or not financially is super hard, right? And even the best predictors in the world, the big publishers that are very successful, even they don't predict correctly all of the time. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing to learn here, right? So and all of these things that the more successful people in the business are doing, it's not magic. You just sit down, you learn it, you practice it a little bit. So I wanna take it apart a little bit and show you what or give you an idea how to do it.
对，那你在预测市场，或是你在看你这个东西到底可不可行的时候，这个预测或是这个判断的准确性，其实当然是你要判断的好是非常非常困难的。那但是总之简单的说，就是这个东西是可以训练的，然后这个是有很多资讯跟很多资料你可以去参考的。那后面基本上可能就是很简单的把这些方向可以去参考、可以去训练的内容，就很快为大家介绍一下。对。
Yeah. So let's start with the easy part, because the thing that the publisher is doing usually is the easiest of all of them, the market analysis. So the main question that you should ask when you have a game idea, or you want to make something, or you have, like, why has nobody made this game yet? And like really ask that question, really drill down into the answer there.
对，那其实发行商大部分在做评估的时候，他们通常最简单会最先做的就是他们会最先做也是最简单的评估这一块，就是评估市场的这一块。因为这方面其实说到底的话，并不是真的那么难做。那但是大家在看到这个问题的时候，最重要的一个你必须要问自己的问题就是为什么还没有人做出这款游戏
？Because there are a couple of possible answers. One is you just had the perfect idea. Nobody had this idea before, and it's going to be a hit, right? That's great. But another possible answer is it's just really, really hard, and lots of people have tried, and they have all failed. And another answer is, well, you can make it, and you can succeed it, but there's no money. Nobody is going to buy it, right? So you don't want those two.
对，那就是第一个问题，这个为什么没有人做出这款游戏的答案，可能有很多不同的可能性，但是最基本的3个常见的，也许你第一个你真的有获得，就是你真的想到一个就是万中无一的点子，没有人做过，然后你如果做出来的话，那应该是会非常有效果。但是也有很可能是这个东西根本就是很多人试过，但是都失败了，或者也有可能是很多人做了之后才知道原来这东西根本没有市场。
And I guess there's a fourth possible answer, which is, yeah, someone else has made that game, and you probably shouldn't make it then because it already exists.
对，那在后面这2个情况，就是刚刚讲到这3种情况里面的后面2者的话，就是他的答案就反而会变成是说，对，其实这个游戏是有人做过的，只是他们都失败了，那也许你不应该做。
And so the only way to find that out is to sit down and really look on Steam and on itch and find similar games, similar to what you are trying to make, right? Similar in genre, or similar gameplay, similar mechanics, similar emotions you're going for if you want to convey a certain feeling, similar style, look, feel, music, something like that. They find games that are similar enough to the game that you are making, and I can guarantee you that you will find at least 10. And if you do it right, you will probably find at least 2 that are very, very close to what you think was a great original idea that nobody has ever had before.
对，那基本上要做这个分析，很简单的方法就是你就是去 Steam 或是一区上，或是去那个一区上面找。那如果你真的非常的认真找了，譬如说类型啊、玩法啊，然后体验、情绪，或是在外观、审美上面都很接近的游戏，你可以拿这些游戏来跟你现在的想法去做比较。那几乎可以保证你绝对可以找到10款以上很接近的游戏，然后甚至会有2-3款可能就完全跟你要想的点子是一模一样的。
Or just like ask Johnson, because Johnson has looked at tons of games and
No.
Yeah, no, but honestly, like we have a community here. You can. I'm not gonna steal your game idea. Like just ask around when you have an idea. Maybe someone knows a game that you've never heard of because it's like super niche and it happens to be very, very similar to what you're making. Happens to me all the time when I talk to my game developer friends.
对，那基本上就是就是大家既然有这个社群在这边，其实互相讨论是蛮基本的行为啦。就是大家应该平常自己都有在做类似的事情，那就只是说你想到一个点子的时候，务必跟你认识的朋友同行，就是稍微就是讨教一下。其实 你可能会发现说，你没有注意到这个东西的原因，只是因为它确实是很niche，然后那个niche可能是你刚好之前都没有调查过，你没有看过的，你不知道有那一块。那所以你以为你那个是你原创的东西，但是通常你如果多问几个人，别人可能都会给你一些回答。
Right. And so when you have those at least 10 similar games, you look at how they did, right? You can easily see the price. You can easily see how many user reviews they have, and from the user reviews, you get a good idea how much they sold. There are like Steam analysis websites. Johnson knows all about that. You can see their Steam page, how they market the game. You can see what they highlight, right? You can read the user reviews, what the users think is great, what the users think the game is lacking. Maybe the thing that, if you have a game that is similar with a negative review that says, okay, this game would be great if it only had this, and that happens to be exactly your game, that's already a way to then fine-tune your marketing to say, it's this game, but it solves this one problem of the game, right? But like really look at those similar games, if they did well or if they didn't do well. Make sure you include some that didn't do well. Don't just like look at Dark Souls.
对，那就是在比较这些基础的很容易看到的公开资讯的时候，很重要的就是你要不是只有比较好的，你要不好的你要一起放进去比较，然后为什么他们做的不好？那甚至有时候你看到一款作品，可能跟你想的确实很像，但是它也许是一个负评比较多的游戏。那这个时候，甚至你就已经可以开始去设想你的行销或是推广的策略，就是你是这款游戏，但是你把这些东西解决了，所以你是一个还是算一个有特定独特性的作品，然后是市场上之前没有的，或是没有做到好的。
So just as an example, in Jack Move case, you would look at JRPGs, you look at pixel art games, you look at cyberpunk games, right? And you look how are they each doing, and you try to focus a little bit more on the ones that are, at team size and not Final Fantasy team size.
对，那在比较的时候，像以刚刚Jack Move 这个之前提到这款作品为例的话，那你会看到的类型可能就是你会去锁定它是 Cyberpunk， 它是2D， 它是 pixel art， 它是日式 RPG 之类的。那你在比较这些东西的时候，一定会有像其实刚刚就有讲到了嘛，就是有大有小游戏，有大团队小团队。那你要看的是比较接近自己量级的，而不是故意去看那些其实跟自己量级差很远的。
So, like I said, this is the easy part. This is fairly maybe not what you're super interested in, but it will. If you do this, it positions you much better both internally and if you're talking to a publisher because you show that you've done your research.
对，那总之就这方面其实刚刚就讲到，就是不难但是说就是你一定要，不管是在自己要做游戏之前，还是你要跟发行商提案之前，你都一定会需要做这些事。
Right. And then once you have those 10 similar games, what you can understand from those is you can make a prediction about how well your game is gonna do, potentially gonna do, right? You can have you see an upper limit on like how many people are even gonna buy it if things go right, because not everyone buys, I don't know, JRPGs, right? You can have a rough idea about what the expected sales, like how many copies you're gonna sell. Ed had a number, 100,000, right? Like 100,000 is a very good number because it's not like crazy. It's not 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, but it's also not like 10K, right? It's like that's a juicy number. If you sell 100,000 copies at $15, that's 1.5 million, right? So that's about the money we're talking. The total amount of money we're talking, and that affects everything. And the other thing okay, translate that first maybe.
对，所以就是像 我们在前面看到 Jack Move 他自己的市场预估，其实也有看到就是一个10万套这样的数字。那就是假设说他已经做过这么多前面的分析，那他可能在比较理想的情况下，他会希望可以达到那个数字。那就代表是接近是你的，比如说一个作品销售的一个你可以去预估的天花板，或者是说是一个你想要去达到的目标，那是你的期望值。那你有这个期望值之后，你算出你大概可以获得多少的毛利，多少的营收，那你后续的所有策略基本上是要从那边推回来。就你已经有这个预估，所以你后续要做的事情大概就是以这个预估为前提。比如说你的理想营收是假设是100万美金，那你100万美金的营收的前提之下，你可以做什么事情？
Right. And the other thing that analyzing other games gives you is a way to see how do they promote their games, right? And then you look at the ones that did well and the ones that didn't do well. Is there a difference in the way they talk to potential customers? Like what does their Steam page look like? Do they have lots of screenshots? Do they say certain other like keywords that people like to hear? Again, in the negative reviews, what's the common thing that people complain about? Right. That's how you can already structure your promotion. Like, you don't have promotion material yet, but you already know what you should say, which words are important to say when you want to promote your game, and which words are essentially meaningless, right?
那看完就是之前的那些资料分析，你如果有做过这些分析的话，就算你还手上没有一个实际可以拿来做就是行销推广的产品，你的行销计划也还没有做完，但是你看过这些分析之后，你就已经可以开始就可以开始去规划说，那我到底要用哪一些关键字来推销这款游戏，然后你可以推销给谁？你的这个你看其他类似游戏的负评，他们在抱怨是什么？你能不能解决这些问题？这个都可以直接纳入到你自己的未来的这个推广跟行销的计划里面。
And you can already tell how competitive is the market that you're going to get into. Like, is it currently a very hot market because everyone is making survival games and you're making a survival game, or is it a dead market because you're making, I don't know, a point and click adventure and we haven't had a very successful one since the 90s? Like, get an understanding of how competitive how difficult it would be to stand out from the other games that are similar to yours, right?
对，然后你做完分析的同时，你也会知道到底在这个市场里面，你的目标市场到底竞争激不激烈？你是去挑了一个生存类型的游戏，所以现在大家都做生存类型游戏，那这个就很竞争，还是你挑的是一个相对来讲已经冷门甚至快死掉的类别？那也许譬如说是像很传统的，就是 point and click 点击式的这种美式的冒险游戏，那你做的这些东西，就是它会直接决定到你日后会遇到多少的就是竞争。
Yeah, and then finally, the business model. You probably want a similar business model to games that are similar. I mean, for us, it's probably going to be just premium on Steam with no like microtransactions or something. But if you're looking into free to play or something like that, I mean, you want to know what games that are similar to yours, how they are solving these kind of problems, right? The business model affects everything in your game as well.
对，那商业模式的部分，虽然说对在场的大部分的开发者，或是对现在大家这个比较容易切入的市场，可能都是你要看 Steam 的 Premium Game 这样。那但是就算你今天是做就是 Free to Play 在手机上，你大概也会需要遇到，就是需要分析这些东西，然后你要决定说这些东西这个不同类型的商业模式，它赚钱的方式，它的游戏类型，其实都会直接有影响，就是不太可能就是说把这个东西切开。
Do we have anyone making free-to-play games in this community?
We have before, like like more of them are making free-to-play and mobile games before.
Mobile, yeah.
But like more and more like at least in Taiwan, indie developers are coming back to PC.
Right.
In the past like 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, mobile is very competitive and difficult. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's move to the second bubble. Why do you even have a section in your pitch deck that explains who you are and what the people are?
就是为什么我们就是在提案简报里面，你为什么要放一个你的团队说明在里面？
Like, why is that interesting to the publisher? I shouldn't have revealed the slide.
Yeah, it's already
Wow,
revealed.
it's already there. So, the chances are the publisher has heard your pitch already from someone else. Basically, a very, very similar pitch, because people come up with the same stuff all the time. It's ridiculous. So the thing that makes you stand out is the people you have. So one of the problems the publisher is trying to evaluate is, will you actually be able to pull this off? Can you make this game? Do you have what it takes to make this game? Do you have the expertise, the skill? Are you excited about the idea? These kind of questions.
对，那发行商他在看到你的提案简报的时候，其实可能他已经看过非常多类似类型或是类似内容的游戏，已经就是之前都提案过了。那他们其实不会觉得，就是不见得会觉得说你的提案跟之前的人有差异，就是非常多在哪边。那这时候能够分出高下的地方，可能会是在于说，发行商会觉得，你的团队看起来确实更适合做这款游戏，不管是你的描述可能更生动，你表现出来的态度可能就是更积极，然后你对这个类型可能更了解，或者是说你有相关的专长，你的这个过去的个人经历还是团队经历可以佐证这个事情。那这些东西其实都会影响到发行商或者是其他看到你提案的人对你的这个事情的评价。
And then the thing that happens all the time is, like, people want to make an MMO, World of Warcraft, or Command & Conquer, or Dark Souls, or like there's a AAA game coming out. Everyone loves it. Everyone wants to make a game like that, right? And you have 3 people, and you make a Shadow of the Colossus clone, and like that is crazy. Like, does the scope of your project fit the size of your team, right? That's a very important question you should answer up front. Because if your team is very small, you have to have like crazy good people to pull that off.
对，那就是你在发想游戏点子，或者是你在看到哪些游戏会影响你未来想要做的事情的目标的时候，你可能会说，我看到这些很棒的3A 游戏，我自己最近玩得很爽，那我才想要做这些东西。那但是可能没有经验的人会觉得说，就是这些东西感觉好像也没有很难做，那我也可以来做做看。那但是你却忽略了说，人家可能是100人团队做，然后你可能是3个人。对，那刚在笑的原因我不知道要不要解释，解释没有，因为刚才有个举例是就是你可能看到旺达与巨像，旺达与巨像是你这个就是以3A 作品来讲是一个非常有艺术性，然后也很创新的游戏，你就有一个很重要的，在你的内心留下一个很大的冲击。对，那但是呢，你可能就是觉得，我也要做一个旺达与巨像的类似游戏，但你只有3个人。好，但是我们现场就有一位这个3个人做旺达与巨像的团队在现场，对，而且他们其实卖得还不错。
Anyway, so the size of your team gives you the burn down rate, the monthly expenses, right? And then the scope of your project gives you the number of months that you expect to work on this. So that gives you the total budget. That's what it costs to make the game. And then on this slide, the expected sales were, the total revenue, and then you subtract 30% for Steam and then another 20% for taxes. So let's say half of the revenue goes away and the other half is what you keep, and then you compare those two numbers, and then it should come out that not only is the expected sales, like, not only will you make money, but you should also make a lot of extra money, because your scope is probably going to be wrong, you're going to take longer, you're going to need more team, maybe hire someone or more time. So you want to have extra runway, extra money if things go wrong.
对，那你从你的游戏规模，你从你的团队的大小，你就可以去算出你的预算，或是你去估计，可以至少会对预算做一个估计。那你我们在前面也有讲到，你看了这些市场分析跟你的游戏点值的分析之后，你大概看出了这个上限值是多少。好，那基本上这就可以直接去推估出，譬如说，那你要做这款游戏，或是做这个类型的游戏，你应该要花多久时间做，你要花多少钱做，你能撑多久？这个大概就是一个很关键的，你必须要在分析完这两部分，分析完那个游戏点值跟分析完你的团队之后，你要能够做的决定。
And so to give an example, I think for Ed, so the expected sales are, I don't know, like 1.5 million, 2 million, right? And the budget, I think, was about 10% of that. So right, let's say 2 million. Budget is 200K. So you have a factor 10 in there, right? That's how big the ideal profit margin would be. Right. Yeah. So of course, if I say 2 million, that really means 1 million, right? Because Steam takes a cut and taxes take a cut, and then so of this 1 million, the publisher has to do the marketing, and they take a cut. Like, so we're down to a factor 5. Maybe we're down to a factor 4 now, but you can see how like this shrinks, and that's the runway that's shrinking if things go wrong. So if your calculation comes out at, like, I don't know, 1.5, factor 1.5, that's already a failure, right? You definitely want to have, I don't know, like factor 4 or 5 at least in there, for risk management.
对，那就是刚刚又举到了就是 Jake Move 的例子，那他可能自己预估的，就是或是其实目前大概就是已经知道的预算抓出来，就是他实际上需要的钱，也许是譬如说20万美金。那刚刚看到他可以卖，假设可以希望的目标期望值是可以卖到10万套，那也许那样子有譬如说100万、200万美金的收入，那你这个乘数可能是5倍、10倍之类的。可是你这个倍率又会因为譬如说各种的失误，然后你的估计错误，你的开发时间延长，或是发行商需要花费的其他成本，那个都会一直让你的能够撑多久的这件事情慢慢下降，然后你的获利的可能性也会慢慢下降。所以，如果你当初预估出来的一个市场数值跟你的你的团队花费的预算做出了比例，你发现说，这个比例只差1倍、2倍，那就代表其实你这东西，就算你真的做了，大概也不会有任何赚钱。你一开始你的点子想好之后，它就已经是一个接近注定商业失败的产品。
Right, and to give another example, for Subnautica, I think the calculation was we wanted to sell 1 million copies at around $30, so that's 30 million, right? And the development cost was estimated to be, I think, like a couple million, like let's say 5 million, right? So that's about factor 6, and take Steam and taxes as factor 3. So it could be pretty tight, right? But then it turns out that the game did much better than 1 million, and so we kept developing it. So at the end, I think it sold like 5 million, and the development cost was about $10 million. So you get, what is that? 5 million, 150.
5 million.
$150 million, right? Yeah. Yeah. And so development costs 10 million, so you have a factor of like 7 or 8 or something in there as a profit, Anyway, that's like a super success, right? Like that's a lot of extra profit. Everything went very well. Most of the time, if you're lucky, you break even.
对，那刚 Jonas 是举他之前前公司的例子，就是他之前是这个深海迷航 Subnautica 的组成室，就是一个潜水的开放世界游戏。那之前前几年都很红。那当初他们自己公司，因为那不是他们团队的第一款作品，他们团队在做深海迷航的时候其实已经蛮大了。那当时他们的估计，刚讲是希望可以卖到100万套，然后他们的定价是大约$30上下，所以是一个比较像2A 的定价规模。那当时你如果这样算的话，你就会算出来，就是譬如你有$3000万的营收，那他们当初自己估的团队成本是大约$500万上下，所以$3000万、$500万就大概是5-6倍的差距。那所以在那个情况下，他去做这个预估，就觉得说，可能他的这个中间的差距，那个误差值还算蛮大的哈。那后来也是很运气很好的，他游戏不止卖了100万套，游戏后来在各个平台总计加起来卖了大概快500万套，所以它实际上的销售总额是已经有破$1。那他因为一开始成功了之后，他又开始加更多东西进去嘛，所以他的团队的执行成本上升了，但是并没有上升很多。譬如说，他本来是预估$500万，他后来是实际花了$1000万在开发，但是他们实际上收到$1亿以上。对，那这个就是运气非常好，然后等于说是不太能够当做标榜的一个例子，因为你不太能够去预期你都是这样大成功。那通常的时候你能够打平就很不错了。
Right, and so at typical indie scales, when we're talking about like teams of like 2, 3, 4 people, there's usually like 1 or 2 zeros less on all of the numbers, right? So do your calculations.
对，那我们一般的就是刚起步的微型团队，你会算的这个数字大概可能少1个0或少2个0都有可能。
Like if you sell 10,000 copies, that's considered an indie success. So that's about the revenue you can get in a good case.
那就是我们一般的微型团队做出来的就是不是2A 等级的作品，可能你能预期的是销售量也许是在10万套上下，最好的情况，那个大概就是你的上限。
Right. Okay. So we have a right side on that slide. So okay, on the left side this was more about like can you even make the thing, right? And then on the right side is should you like why is your team the perfect team to make this game? Why not some other team with the same, like if the idea is good and the budget and the scope is fine, but like what is special about you that aligns with the game that you're making? Does it like how maybe your company is all about JRPGs and this is a JRPG and that's why, or maybe in our case was Subnautica. Company was about non-violence, and the game was a non-violent game, right? So that there's a strong value connection between the two. And then your personal values, if you are indies, like your company and you as a person are kind of like the same thing. So like see how what you are trying to create aligns with who you are, what you believe in, what it means. Like what is it? Why is it something that ties to you as a person or as a company?
Do I want to add that, like, your boss basically said after natural selection they don't want to make a shooting game?
Okay, so I can give a little bit of history because the game we made before Subnautica was a shooter, competitive shooter, right? And then, but the company is in the US, and I think that was 2013. They had one of the big school shootings. And the boss was really upset about that, and he was saying, okay, we don't want to put more violence out into the world. Even though the boss believes that, you know, just like playing a game and shooting real guns is very different and doesn't mean the same thing, but he was just so upset about this real world thing that he was saying, okay, no, we're going to do something different, right? And so this core value then translated into the creation of the game and had a very strong connection.
对，那 就是我们看完，就是我们有没有能力做这个团队评估之后，就是团队评估做完，我们有没有能力做？那我们到底为什么要做这个东西？为什么是我们来做？这个事情就是你自己的团队跟你自己个人本身要去衡量的事情。那以 Subnautica 为例的话，其实他们那个公司本身之前做的游戏是一个连线的非对称式的就是第一人称射击游戏。那这是因为那段时间好像在2013年前后的时候，美国那时候那阵子连续发生好几件重大的校园枪击案件，那就是公司的创办人本身非常的生气，那他不希望自己的游戏就是又创造了更多就是把枪械变得很酷炫的那种情感丢到市场里面，他希望直接做一款完全没有任何就是枪支可以做攻击的。或者说做杀害的这种游戏进去，那个时候他这个公司的目标就跟后来他要做 Subnautica 的这个情感或者是说他的这个价值的连接就非常的深。
And with the biggest Dark Souls fans, that's why we want to make a Dark Souls clone. That does not count.
OK， 对，那基本上就是有一个很重要的重点是，如果你只是说我们是一个黑暗灵魂系列的忠实支持者，所以我要做一款黑暗灵魂系列游戏，这样子的 why us 是不能用这种回答做答案的。
Yeah, this one is an interesting one. I don't see it talked about very often, but I think I learned something here when I first heard that. So advantage is about imagine your perfect idea, your pitch got leaked, and now it's like public on the internet, and everyone knows about like this crazy good idea. What is the advantage you still have, even though the secret is out? What's the advantage your team still has over other teams that might try to like take the idea and beat you to market because you haven't actually made the product yet, right? Like, do you have like 1 year ahead of everyone else because you've already worked on this prototype and you've already figured out hard problems? Have you worked on a similar game where you solved some hard problems that other people still have to solve? Is there some like special? Are you the super physics programmer that is very difficult to replicate for others? Like ideally, you have to have something that gives you the edge, even if other people know exactly what you're doing. And what that allows you to do is also talk about it a little bit earlier and talk about it a little bit more openly. And when you pitch to publishers, you don't have to be so afraid that they will just like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and we have this other team here. Maybe we'll just give it to them, right?
对，那再来就是竞争优势这一块，就是 Jonas 觉得好像平常比较少人看到特别针对这一块讲哦。那最简单的一个描述的方式就是说，假设今天你有一个超棒的点子，然后这个超棒的点子不小心流到网络上了，已经大家都知道了。那在这种情况下，你身为一个团队或者你这个个人开发者，还有没有任何剩下的优势？就是说，当大家都跟你有一样的点子的时候，你还是最适合来执行这个点子的人。那可能是你有解决过相关的问题，可能是你已经有一个相当时间的投入在这款产品上，你已经譬如说比别人领先1年2年了。那这个东西，你能不能有效的保持这个壁垒，或是说这个领先直到别人有能力他跑过来抄你或者是什么的或者是说，当你今天把这个案子提给发行商的时候，发行商说，你这个团队提的案子不错啊，可是我有另外一个更适合的团队，他们也提了一样的案子，那两相比较之下，我决定给另外一个团队。
Yeah, and good examples are always like things like very distinct art style, difficult to replicate, right? It's just your art style. Very hard technical problems that you happen to have solved. That's just like high barrier of entry for anyone else to replicate. There was one more and in general, like experience. Like if you've been in the industry for like 25 years, you've probably seen a lot of things. Difficult to replicate for someone who's junior.
对，那常见的几种优势，譬如说一个很有独特性的画面风格这个东西可能是很个人的，所以别人很难抄你，或者抄了也抄不像。那或者是说 有非常难的技术问题，你已经解决了，那别人要花时间来解决。
And then the last point, which I called stretch goal, is basically what happens if your game is successful? What happens if your game happens to be a really big hit and now you need to deliver more content, right? Like you have to like somehow milk that game more. You have to make it bigger, sell it to more. Like what? So if it goes well, what is your idea to make it even bigger, to grow it even more? Like ask your team where you could take it further.
对，那最后一点是看起来会表面上会觉得比较奇怪，这是什么？那它其实就跟 Kickstarter 那个延伸目标是一模一样的概念，就是如果你的专案真的超级成功，那你现在想要从这个专案上面去表现更多东西，你想要放更多东西进去，你有没有东西可以放？你有没有适合的团队可以做，把游戏在成功的情况下，它可以继续扩展，可以延伸你的成功，你扩大你的成功等级的这种条件。
And so the flip side of that is define your minimum product as well, right? Like, of course, you have this grand vision, the super game, MMO, everything simulation, but like the reality is you probably have to cut that down to a point where it's reasonable to make, and then that is your scope, that is your budget, that is what you're pitching, and then the grand vision is in the back of your mind in case you get successful with a core thing, right?
对，那从这个角度来说，另外一个面向就是，你也可以先想象，就是说，如果我想到了一个非常大的目标，我想到了一个可能要做10年才做得完的东西，那你能不能把它先浓缩成一个你绝对可以在短期内、在预算内执行出来的结果？然后，如果这个东西、这个核心目标成功了，你才有机会去慢慢推向你的这个比较远大的那个目标。那你有没有这样子的延伸的条件？
Right. And I think we're coming to an end here. So the last part, the third part, is about what Ryan Clark calls hooks. Hooks are things that are special about your game, like something that is not in lots of other games. So the idea is from fishing, right? You hook a fish, you catch the player's attention with the hooks. And so the main thing is it's not good enough to make a good game if there's nothing special about it, because nobody's gonna notice it or nobody's gonna care about it.
对，那最后一点就是我们要问的是说，你自己觉得你的游戏、你的点子真正特别的地方在哪边？你有没有足够的让人家上钩的这个条件，让人家一看到就觉得说，哎，这个东西跟别人不一样，然后有办法很快速的吸引别人进来。就是我们可以说这是游戏的引子，就是一个 hook， 引是那个牵引的引。
Right. So for Subnautica, for example, the hook was like underwater exploration and non-violence, because there are not very many non-violent games out there, and there are not very many underwater games out there. So those are automatically special about the game, right?
对，那以那个深海迷航为例的话，当初深海迷航在推出的时候，其实很少有水下的这个开放世界游戏。那光把水下跟开放世界这2点结合起来，其实就已经是一个非常好的特色。
Right, and so this blue ocean component, that means that comes from a book which is called, I think, Blue Ocean or something. The idea is there are 2 types of markets. One is the red ocean and one is the blue ocean. The red ocean is where everyone else is competing with each other, and there's a lot of blood in the water. That's why it's red, right? And the blue ocean is nobody has tried anything there yet. Like it's just completely unexplored. So if you have that's also very risky, because maybe there are no fish there, so could be total failure. But if there are fish there, they are yours. There's no competition at all, and so it's a good idea to at least strive for that, to find something that where there's no competition at all.
对，那蓝海要素其实大家应该都听过，就是基本上就是讲市场的竞争性的问题，就是你市场竞争性少就是蓝海，市场竞争性很激烈就是红海。那唯一要注意的一点是你看到的蓝海它是单纯只是一片蓝海，底下都没有鱼，还是它是蓝海，然后底下真的有鱼可以钓
？Examples again, Subnautica, there was no underwater survival game. At least when we started, there was very, very quickly after there was one other, but then luckily they went out of business. Cyberpunk Jrpgs, I think there's one or something like that. It's
basically like 3 or 5.
Yeah, it's there are not many. It's not a very competitive thing, right? Yeah, pray for the gods. There's just Shadow of the Colossus. That's it, I guess, right? There's not a lot of competition. I don't know your name in the corner, but the games that you're making is quite unique. Like card battler, turn-based game. There are not a lot of games in that you directly compete against, right? So those are interesting to make. Those are hooky by design.
那就是刚提到这些例子，我们刚其实就是重复讲到很多例子，然后这些作品基本上，譬如说以 Subnautica 为例的话，它当时出现的时候，其实类似游戏真的很少。然后如果你去用譬如说 Cyberpunk Jrpgs 去搜寻 Steam 的话，你会发现能够列出来的游戏数量也是很少的。好，那这些东西就是基本上它会，你光把这个定出来，它就已经是一个不错的吸引人的项目了。
Right, and then the other 2 points, just for examples, are so value innovation means you take something that exists, but you make it better. Like you for the customer, not like arbitrarily better, but like you fix a problem that the customer has by looking at the reviews of a game that is similar, and everyone is complaining it should have this one thing or it shouldn't do this one thing, and then you fix that one thing, right? That's value innovation. And then star power is if you have like a super famous writer who's doing your writing, or a super famous artist who's doing your art, or like some person that already has is already famous.
对，那价值创新的部分，主要是强调说你有没有去解决就是使用者他真正想要的东西，或是他之前抱怨的东西。那就是可能以前在这个特定游戏类型某一个状态，或是某一个功能都是被大家有点嫌恶的，那你后来提出一个想法去做法，去真的去把它做好。那明星效益的部分就是，如果你团队里面有一些很知名的，比如说写手、很知名的画家，那这些人他们就都等于有点像是自带流量，那他可以帮助你的游戏直接有这个推广的效果。
Right, or a famous composer doing your music, like a good thing, right? And so once you have your hooks, you list how many do you have, like just total, like write all them down and count them, and then for each of them you have to check like how valuable is that, how unique or how strong do people care about that, because sometimes it's unique but I don't know, nobody cares about this specific thing, right? And the way to test that, or the way to see what the quality of the hook is well, you can go to like a game show and show the hooks, right? Or you can make an itch page and talk about the hooks, or just like talk to people, pitch them your idea, and see if like what keywords they react to, what's the good, I don't know, social media, talk to your friends, like test whether the hooks that you have are actually interesting.
对，那我们刚讲到上面这4点讲完之后，你应该就是可以把你觉得真的有优势的这些，就是可以让人家上钩的这些要素，每一个都列出来。那你到底有多少个像这样的要素？每一个要素各自的强度是多少？就是评估这些要素的分量，评估这些要素、这些吸引人的钩子、这些钩子的品质。然后有了这些东西之后， 你要尽快的去用各种方式去尝试，到底你的评估是正确还是错的。比如说，你可以去参加游戏早期版本，去参加电玩展，那电玩展的玩家给你什么反应？你跟你的朋友，你跟你的同行讨论，他们给你什么反应？那有没有什么关键字是他们会有特别有反应到的？
And then the final slide, well, there's one more, but almost final slide, is about marketing. Because the way, again, marketing is about saying the right words. And so you have to know which ones are the right words, which words are meaningless and which one are magical. And so you want to communicate what is unique about your game, the hooks about your game. You want to be able to communicate those things in your trailer, on your store page, in all your social media presence, in your press kit. Because remember what Ed had on his slides earlier about what publishers say, what they are looking for in a pitch. They look for the hooks. They look for what is unique about the game, right? So the better you can communicate that, the easier it is to pitch your game both to a publisher and also to like customers directly on Steam, right? It all comes down to communicating the value of what makes your game special.
对，那最后的就是跟影子的这个相关的议题，就是你要怎么把这些影子推广、什么行销这些东西出去。好，那在行销方面来说，很多时候你最重要就是说这些影子可能都是可以用一些关键字来呈现。那你到底是不是找到正确的关键字？哪些关键字是有效？哪些关键字是你讲了也没有人有感觉，就是无效的？好，那前面的发行商提到的这些他们在看的东西，刚刚发行商有给一些举例。那他们在看的这些东西，其实最主要就是呈现这些你能不能把这些 hook 呈现给这些发行商？那发行商就会觉得说，哦，这个东西确实很吸引人，我之前没有看过，或者说这个东西确实比我之前看到的要好。那你可以去看的东西有，譬如说就是人家在这个宣传影片上怎么去行销特定的点子，然后你在商店页面上要怎么样传递你的游戏的一些特色等等等。
And so Ryan, the guy from the beginning, he goes as far as being like, if he cannot describe the hook, if he cannot communicate the hook, then he's not going to make that game. Right? He has to be able to figure out how to describe it in a way that you get it, like within one sentence or like very shortly, in order to know that this hook will be meaningful, has a chance to work.
对，所以像一开始我们提到那个就是 Ryan Clark 这个人，他讲过类似的主题的时候，他有提到一个很重要的观念是，有时候你会有好的影子，你会有好的 hook。可是你不知道怎么讲，你不知道怎么把这个 hook 丢出去，那基本上这个 hook 就等于没有用。所以你不能只是说，哎，我有一个很好的点子，我在我脑中觉得它很好。这有点像，这是额外的举例啊，刚刚翻译没有讲，就是譬如说我们以前刚开始在推广 VR 的时候，很大的一个问题就是 VR 大家眼睛看得到嘛，你要亲自戴，可是你没有办法用嘴巴说 VR 到底像什么东西，给人家什么感觉，所以。像那样子的情况就很像是那种你有好的点子，你有好的东西可以给人体验，可是你讲不出来，你没有办法做宣传片，那这个东西它就在宣传这个 hook 上面会有一个很大的障碍。
Right, and that's brings us to the last slide, and so this is also one thing that I find really, like when I first heard that, it made sense to me because all you have to do. I think you can forget about everything I just said because it all is in this one question. Sit down and ask yourself, what will the game be the #1 in the world? And this is not, I mean it, like what will it be #1?
对，那就是如画面上讲的一样，就是你在最后评估的时候，你可以把就是前面那些问题，如果你觉得太繁琐，你记不得，那也没差。重点是最关键的一个问题，你到底你在做的这款游戏，你想要做的这款游戏，在哪一方面可以做到真正做世界第一？
Because you can say like, well, it's not going to be the #1 at anything, right? I'm just an indie person here. I have no chance to be the #1, but that's not right. The easiest way to be an expert in your field is to pick a very small field. And so you can be the number one in a very, very small field. Or depending on your scope. But for example, Ed is making a Cyberpunk Jrpgs. He has a real chance to be the number one Cyberpunk Jrpg in the world with that game, right? It's because it's not gonna beat, like, I don't know, Dark Souls or GTA 7, but it can absolutely beat every other Cyberpunk Jrpg, and that's a very strong, like, you can easily communicate that, and that's the mission, right? That's what you want to achieve, and so yeah, you do first.
Yeah, so 就是你在问这个问题的时候，你可能会有点
pressure.
你可能会有点疑问是说，我的团队就这么小，就算我觉得我的游戏哪边地方很突出，但是它一定不会是世界第一嘛。但是Jonas 是觉得说这样的想法其实就是错的。你应该就算是很小的团队、很小的作品，你也应该要去思考，那它在什么样很针对性、很小的范围里面，它真的是可以做到世界第一。对，就是有这样子的点子，有这样子的游戏，才是真正有机会，就是从那边再扩展出来的。因为你可以有机会在那个小圈圈里面，真的把其他的所有的对手都打败，或者是那边真的是你第一个到的地方。
Right. And to give some more examples, Subnautica, #1 underwater survival game in the world, right? Like that was the goal that was achieved. There's no other underwater survival game that is bigger. And if you look at successful games, like take any successful game coming out 2020, I'm sure you will find something about each one of them where they are #1 in the world, as long as you like make it small or define enough, right?
对，那就是 Jonas 说，你可以想办法找一下，比如说今年会上市的所有游戏，然后你把表现特别好的都挑出来，你大概都可以，就是如果你真的仔细去分析的话，你够聚焦的去看每个游戏的话，你应该都可以找到这一款游戏，它在特定的一个很小的面向，不一定是全面，就是一个特定的很小面向，它也许就真的是世界第一。那也是因为这点，它才真的做的，它才可以有这样子的成绩。
And yeah, if you have that, that's your goal, that's your mission, that's what your team understands, that's what you're building, right? Then you have clarity.
对，那如果你能够找到这个点的话，基本上那就是这是你要做的事情，这也是你的团队要一起做的事情，这是你们整个公司或整个团队必须要一起前进的方向。那你的目标就会非常明确。
That's the talk, yeah. Thank you.
好，那感谢。
We are way over time, right?
Yeah, we're way over time.
Do we even have time for questions?
I guess we'll just open to the, or we'll try to open up for some questions if anyone has any. Like, 就是如果有任何人现在想要直接提问的话，也可以直接就提出来。那如果没有的话，我们等一下就直接进入就是会后的交流闲聊时间。因为其实这场本来没有要讲那么久，不好意思。好，那看起来应该等一下就大家私下讨论啊。OK 吗？好。那就感谢大家今天来参加我们这个10月底的个独立游戏开发者分享会啊。那我们11月底预定也还会再有一场，好，那就是我们大概11月初会再公布相关的讯息。好，那就感谢大家今天来参加，谢谢。